Welcome to the Piston Fanatic. I'm your host, Dave Dalton, and I'm excited to share my passion and perspective of our Detroit Pistons as we go on this fantastic voyage together. I've been a diehard Piston fan since the days of Dave Bing and Bob Lanier. I've also been the varsity basketball coach of a very successful program in northern Michigan. I want to thank you all for listening so much. I appreciate each and every one of you. Please take this time to subscribe. We're just about to 2,000 subscribers. I can almost taste it. So please subscribe and like. Today, we have a lot to talk about. And first, I want to apologize. I've been off the air for quite a while. My granddaughter, I coach her AAU basketball team, and we're in Cincinnati for like 6 days, and we were down in Louisville for a bunch of days. And then I'm in the process of moving. And if you've moved before, you know how much fun that is. So I will be back and better than ever, I hope, sooner than later. But I know this is a dead time, but I just want to recap basically what happened during the off season and how it applies to the Pistons over under. So the Pistons over under currently is at 24.5. And I've been, again, optimistic that they were going to go over and under the last 2 years or 3 years, and they've been under every year. So I know most of you don't have faith, but I do have faith this year, and I am not a gambler. But if I were to gamble, and I still might, do my first bet online, and I would bet that we were going to make the over. So if the over under was set at 28.5, which I think we're going to get, I think we're going to get about 28 wins and possibly more, but who knows. But I would not bet on 28.5. But if it's 24.5, I would probably try that bet. I'm not encouraging any of you to do it, so don't say after you bet the money and they go under, don't come yelling to me. So anyway, a lot of things have happened during the off season. Not as much as maybe I thought there were going to. I thought maybe there would have been some bigger and better moves, but regardless, we did make a huge upgrade at the coaching position. So whether you think JB is the greatest coach in the world, but I think JB Bickerstaff is going to be a huge improvement over Monty. I think, 6 wins, I think at least, just in the coaching improvement there's going to be. So JB, I've heard a lot of good things about him. There's still people questioning his offense. And I'm going to say this before, people always say, oh yeah, JB does this, JB does that. And JB, he always gets teams to improve. Well, one thing I want to say is they did have 4 all-stars. I'm not sure if Evan Mobley was an all-star, but he's borderline. But Garland was an all-star, and Allen was an all-star, and Mitchell certainly was a multi-time all-star. So they had a good team. So for them to win, JB makes them better. Well, they added some really good players. And so I'm not saying he's not, but it's undeniable what he's done with the defense. And so, he had 2 mediocre defending guards, and they still were near the top of the league in defense. And so, biggest thing is that JB can do is if he can get Duren to play better on defense. And I cautiously optimistic that he's going to get Duren to play better defense. And certainly we all us Piston fans know that is going to be so important if we're going to be any good. Otherwise, we got to get some center that can protect the rim. And so we'll see. But I do think he can get Ivey. I think he's going to get everybody to play better defense. Are we going to be a super defensive team? I doubt it. I think we're going to be much improved. But I think the fact that we have very few outstanding defenders on our team, doesn't make it so that you think that it's conducive to having a great defensive team. So we'll see what happens. I think, but even having the veterans like Tobias is known as a okay defender, and maybe he slipped a little bit because he's getting older. But Tobias has been in the league. He's been on high-level teams. He knows NBA rotations. He knows where to be and when to get there. Same thing with maybe a lesser degree. Hardaway is, I think, even not as good a defender, but Hardaway's still been in the league a long time, and he's still, he played, the Mavs had real good defense this past year, and he was part of their team. So, yeah, those guys have knowledge. And Malik Beasley, I think, played what most people consider his best defense of his career with the Milwaukee Bucks. But still, they let him go for not very much because they, I think, I've heard Milwaukee Bucks fans say that you're not going to like how good he is on defense, but he can shoot the lights out, high volume, high percentage, and so that's going to space the floor. So we will talk a little bit about rotations later, but it is interesting. We got Malik Beasley. I think we paid $6 million a year for him. The Bucks just got Gary Trent Jr. for $2.6 million, and Gary Trent Jr. is taller, and I think he's a better player than Beasley. So interesting how things go. I guess he wanted to play on a contender. We do have to get guys that want to come here, and I do think we do overpaid for Tobias for sure, but he did want to come here, and so, who knows? So um, we're going to talk. Oh, another Tyus Jones. He signed with the Suns for like nothing, like 3.6 million, and he was highly regarded. And a lot of people thought maybe we would get him for our backup point guard. So we do need a backup point guard. We have one roster spot left. There's a lot of speculation. We have $11.5 million in cap space that we could take on another player. We also have the room exception, which we can, in 3 years, $29 million, we could add a player, or we could take on a player from another team and not hurt our salary cap. So there's still, Markel Fultz is out there, and he is. I love the way he played last year. I think he's really played well. He was the #1 pick in the entire draft the year that Tatum the Celtics and the Sixers flip trade draft spots in third for first, and the Sixers took Fultz, and then he was a nightmare, and he had psychological problems with his free throw shooting and they couldn't even hardly play him. And anyway, he's bounced back, and he's been a really good, solid player. He plays really good defense. He's a really good passer. 47% from the floor, 51% he shot the year prior to this. He was even better. And last year he was in and out with injuries, and then they had more players that they were playing. But this past year he averaged 4.6 assists and only in less than 2 turnovers. So he would be a really good if we thought we had to get a point guard. So if you listen to everything that JB Bickerstaff said and what Trajan said, adding them together, it really sounds like they are going to give it a shot at playing Ivey and Cade together, and that they're going to stagger them, which I begged for constantly last year. And I a firm believer in staggering. And so when Cade's not on the floor, Ivy is the point guard, and so you don't have always one of those two guys is on the court. And again, I begged for it last year, and I'm fascinated with staggering. So I think that we need to stagger, and I mentioned it last year, Duren and Ausar. You don't want two of those guys on the court at the same time. I'm also all for staggering Tobias and Simona Fontecchio. So I would, you can play them together. All these guys you can play together some, but when possible, when one of them's off the court, then you want the other one on, because like Duren and Ausar, they can't shoot. And so you can play them for a while together, but you don't, when there's minutes, Duren's going to have to come off as part of the time. So make sure that's the minutes that Ausar's playing. And you want Fontecchio. I personally probably would start Fontecchio and Tobias together. And then if I did that, you take one guy out early, like at the 6-minute mark, you leave the other guy in. Then when you take the other guy out, you put the other guy back in, and that's how you do it. And so we'll see how that goes, and see what I heard JB Bickerstaff talk about staggering. So yeah, but JB is, there's a lot of good things about him, how he's inspired players. I love the way he has some fire in him, and he'll get after the refs. And not that that's just a great thing, but he showed more passion. He's motivated. I really believe the thing is that Monty did not inspire our players last year, and coaches can do that. And if you listen to him talk, every time you listen to him talk, did he inspire you? Not me. And I even heard a video of Isaac Okoro talking about how before a playoff game, he played a TikTok for the team, and it really motivated them and inspired them and made them play looser and harder. And so I just think, and he has this, I forget what he gives them out a little award for, like whoever was the toughest player or whatever, and just little things like that make a difference. And we're humans. Humans are not robots. I think most of us know that, but I think that he will motivate the players to do that. Going back to Isaac Okoro, so this is fascinating. So, all these things, I wanted certain guys, and that, people have been speculating about who's going to get this guy or who's going to get that guy. And these guys, they know, like JB Bickerstaff knows Isaac Okoro. He coached him. And what did JB Bickerstaff say about Isaac Okoro? And I think he's a restricted free agent, so maybe we'd have to do a sign and trade. He said that he was the toughest perimeter defender in the NBA. And if you watched him, he is amazing. So the other fascinating thing is 1 year, and so they didn't guard him, just like they didn't guard Stu, which I always bring up. He shot 39% on threes. They left him wide open, but he shot 39%. So what would we want if we, we'll talk maybe a little bit later about Ron Holland. And Ron Holland is supposed to have big effort on defense, but this is the guy that J.B. Bickerstaff considers the best perimeter defender in the league. He held Anthony Edwards to a game where he was 7 for 27 in a game. But he shot also the 39%. He shot 49% from the field this past year, 39% on threes, 3 rebounds in like 27 minutes and 2 assists. That's a player. He's 6'5", and so we don't have room for him exactly, but he sounds like a player that you would want to have. It sounds like he's what we would hope. Ron Holland could play defense as good as Isaac Okoro, and we would hope that Ron Holland can shoot 39% on threes in the NBA season. And he played 69 games. It's not like he just didn't play, and he's 23 years old. So we'll see what happens. I don't know how much impact he has on all that, but we'll see. But like we've talked about, Trajan Langdon was around Brandon Ingram in New Orleans, and we didn't get him. Najee Marshall, though, that's still going to burn me. Everybody watch how Najee Marshall plays this next year, and Jalen Smith. Those were my 2 guys I wanted to sign. Maybe they won't be any good, but we would have paid way less for them than we paid added together than we paid for Tobias. And one of them is 6'10", can play the 4 and the 5, and shoots 42%. Jalen Smith shoots 42% on threes, and he's can play 4 out of the 5. Najee Marshall's a tough, gritty defender, and he shot like 38% on threes. So we'll see how these guys go. But I think Markelle Fultz, we'll see what happens with the backup point guard. We can leave that spot open and have more flexibility, and again, we can use it to try to trade. We didn't, big thing that Trajan wanted to do was accumulate assets, and we didn't really get to do that like I hoped. And we got the 3 picks, second round picks for taking on Hardaway's contract, but we had to give up Grimes. That grinded me. So we'll see what happens. And we don't know. Everybody speculates, but nobody really knows about Grimes doesn't want to be here. Some people are saying that Grimes doesn't want to be here, and I don't know that there's a report. Here's one of my biggest pet peeves about people, and is Isaiah Stewart. And I think Stewart was great last year. So, and I said as a coach, I would always want Isaiah Stewart, the guys just like him on my team. But how many times do we have to listen over the last 2 or 3 years that all these teams want Isaiah Stewart? Well, he's good. He's got to be really good because all these teams want to trade for him. Well, when there really was some trade rumors was like before he signed his extension, and he was on this cheap rookie deal because he was like the 18th player picked. And so these teams wanted to get this cheap guy who could come in high energy and play some defense and come off the bench and play on a playoff team. And I don't deny that he could be good at that. But I want to know all these teams now in these recent years. So my thing is, for one thing, James Edwards III, who is a great writer and gives us lots of information. And if you don't, I read every article he writes. So, but he's in love, just like all of us have players that we love. James Edwards loves Stu. And Stu can do no wrong, and he's always promoting Stu. And the fact is, if all these playoff teams wanted Isaiah Stewart so bad for 3 years, why hasn't anybody got him? Why? The Pistons, I can't value him that much if all these teams think he's so awesome that they're willing to trade for him, that not one of them could come up with a trade. So anyway, that's just an interesting thing that's always kind of bothered me, that people just keep on. A lot of talk in Piston land is regurgitated things. In all sports, people say this, they hear something and then they repeat the same narrative over and over again. So, anyway, I'm a little bit fired up. I haven't got to do this in a long time, but our boy Killian Hayes signed a contract, and I was so upset that they started him over Ivey and played him over Ivey, and he was one of the worst shooters ever. I think there's potential there. I think a lot of his shooting, I think that he was one of the worst shooters in NBA history, but part of it was mental. I really believe that. So, you got to know that he's with the Nets. The Nets are rebuilding, so it's a great spot for him, and he's getting the. I'm sure he's getting the minimum, and it's not guaranteed. So he's got a shot to make the 15-man roster. That's what I was saying last year. If he was good enough to start for us, and so we cut him like 2 months left in the season, and until just now, not one of the other 29 teams wanted him to be their 15th man. So that just tells you something about him. So um, anyway, I jumping all over the place, but I do think that we have a good chance at 24.5, 24 and a half wins is our over under. I am taking the over, and I've taken the over. I've never bet. I never gamble. I might gamble this year for the first time in my life. I might place a bet, and if it remains at 24.5, I'm going to wait and see if there's any more moves coming up. I doubt there's any big ones coming up, but I'm going to see how long I can wait and see if that stays there. And I think it probably will, because why would you? They only won 14 last year, and a 10-game leap is huge. And so if but I will tell you this also, if the line were 28.5, I would not dare touch it with money, because I don't gamble. I think they're going to get 28 wins? I think they might. I think there's a very strong possibility they get 29, 30, some low 30s, I think is really within the grasp. And I'm going to talk about some of that a little bit with some of the other teams that are in the NBA, why I think that's possible. And I said about how we've improved with our coach, but I also think that a big area of improvement is we got Fred Vinson. And Fred Vinson, it's not going to happen overnight, but I think he's going to improve. Like I said, if he can improve 5 guys, 5% on their 3-point percentage, that will make the huge difference in how many games we win. So we look forward to that. But the other thing that I think is one of the biggest moves of the offseason that I don't get here talked enough and about this going to make a difference is a move that Troy Weaver made. And that was trading for Fontecchio. I think Fontecchio is going to be a huge difference maker on this team. And I think that he is incredible. And I think, he's not an all-star, but I think that when he gives us a shooter. That's the biggest thing we're lacking. And along with Tobias, like I said, you stagger those two guys. I think you're going to have, and play them together, you're going to have really good spacing. And he's a decent defender, decent passer, can take the ball to the basket. And we didn't have anybody in the lineup like that all year last year. So that is, I think, going to be one of our big improvements. So you look at the league. So obviously the Celtics are number one, even though how interesting is it that in the Olympics today they played a game and Tatum didn't play a minute. And then Jaylen Brown didn't make the team, but Drew Holiday starts for them, and Derek White plays a lot over those other guys. So that is really fascinating what happens. But but anyway, the Knicks are going to be great. They got all those players. They got Bridges, and OG Anunoby, and they just got a great team along with Jalen. And so they're going to be tough, and the Sixers are going to be tough. They added a lot of really good players. They added some really small pieces that I think are going to fit really well together with Maxey, and they got Paul George, so to go with Embiid. So that's going to be a formidable team, and the Bucks are going to be good. The Bucks made some really interesting picks. They got DeLon Wright. Piston fans know him. He's a good, solid backup. But then they got, like I said, they got Gary Trent Jr. and a guy that I really like. He played for the Lakers. So Torian Smith. And so he is a good wing 3-and-D guy, and he can shoot the three, and he's a tough defender. So I think they are going to be improved. Of course, injuries are always a big thing. When you got Embiid, he's always hurt, and when you have the guys that are on the Bucks, there's always a good chance that those guys are going to get hurt. So they're older. The old teams players get hurt even more than other teams. So the Pacers are going to be good. They got some good new players, and so they're going to be tough. The Magic are going to be tough. The Cavs are going to be tough. So there's 7 teams, I think. But I think after those 7 teams, more than most years, I think that there's more open spots. I think that the Heat are vulnerable, and obviously, if Jimmy Butler gets hurt, that's a huge hole for them. And the Hawks, they just had their issues. The Hawks got a lot of talent, but they've never put it together. The Bulls, it looks like they're almost kind of like trying to tank, kind of, but that's a team we could, leapfrog. And even if we can't leapfrog the Heat and the Hawks and the Bulls and the Raptors and the Nets and the Hornets and the Wizards, those are teams that we can win games against. And so when you got that many teams that you can win games against, that's going to help us get over the 24.5. So I just think that the Raptors, they're in a little bit of disarray, and the Nets, they're kind of rebuilding. They got their first round draft picks back. So in the Hornets, they're always a hard team to gauge. They could be better. So some teams are, the Hornets could, they got a new coach and they got some new players, and along with Brandon Miller and um, LaMelo. So that's going to be a squad. And the Wizards, everybody picks as the last. So I saw a thing where they rated the teams in the East, and the Pistons were second to the last. So we were just above the Wizards, so who are trying to rebuild and are supposedly trying to lose, but they still got good players. So yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see. We just lost. You look at what we lost. We lost Grimes and Wiseman. I'm not a Wiseman hater. I think that he was a good, solid backup. But when you add Tobias Harris, Tim Hardaway Jr., who I don't love, and Beasley. I don't know how good he is, but he can really shoot it. But the players we added are better than the players that we lost. I do think Grimes had the potential to be. And he was his second year in the league. He was a starter for the Knicks, and they were a tough playoff team, and he never got off the court because he was so tough. But then we got um, Paul Reed, B-ball Paul, and so that gives us a shot blocker that we've never had, and who knows what's going to happen. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens with um, Ron Holland. So we got to see him play in the G League. He played pretty good, not great. He didn't shoot good percentage. He drove to the rim all the time, and so many times he got blocked. I don't know how many times he got blocked, or he couldn't get the shot up to the basket, and so that was concerning. The question is, send him to the G League, and so guess what? He played the whole year last year in the G League and averaged 20. So is that gonna? How much better is that going to make him? And I will say it's going to be a different story because the Cruise is going to be way better than what the Ignite were. So those Ignite guys played on a garbage team, and that's why they disbanded Ignite. They don't no longer have that because it was so bad, such a bad situation for players. So it might be different for him. But I do have looked at the league, just this last year. My guy that I wanted the Pistons, Cam Whitmore, I wanted the Pistons to draft. He started the year in the G League and he tore it up. I mean, he averaged like 25 and 8 rebounds and shot like 40% on threes. He dominated. And then they brought him up to the NBA and he took right off and just played phenomenally there. So Jarris Walker, who played most of the year in the G League for the Pacers, he now looked great in the Summer League. Of course, are there minutes for him? So the same thing that happened with different guys, they don't necessarily get to play a lot, and so because their team is stacked at their position, so then they send them to the G League and at least they get some experience to play. So yeah, there are a lot of teams who are doing that. So I wouldn't be surprised if Ron Holland plays some in the G League. I just don't see where there's minutes when you have to play Tobias and Fontecchio and Ausar and Tim Hardaway Jr. And so where are the minutes? And then if you're going to play Paul Reed or Stu at the 4 or some, then that's even more players. So Bickerstaff has his job cut out for him, man. He's going to have to figure out how to make the pieces fit. Now, obviously, there's always injuries. So we did pick up a new assistant coach, Vitaly Potempe, I can't pronounce it, Potapenka. And he's been a coach. He was at the Cavs. I'm sure he was with JB, and he also coached with Memphis and the Cavs. So he's played in the NBA for like 10 years for 4 different teams. So we added him, and obviously Luke Walton, and he was around the Warriors, so he has knowledge. Not every coach, like I always use the Belichick thing. When Belichick was winning all those championships, his assistants would go and get hired as head coaches, and they did nothing. They were bad. They get fired after a year. And so that doesn't mean Luke Walton, but he did get to see when the Warriors were really the Warriors, when everybody was in their prime and they had that cooking that offense. And if he picked up some things from that. Then he was the head coach for the Kings and the Lakers for a while, and he tried to replicate that. And I think the Kings had a high-scoring team when he was there, but he ended up getting fired from there. So yeah, we'll see what happens with all that. Like I said, I'm jumping around a lot, I know, but like I said, I'm excited to get to talk to you guys again. I always love it. There's still a chance, do we need to add another center? Do we want to get a good center? Again, I would love Wendell Carter Jr. So the Magic have too many centers. They're hoarding them. And so he is got, he can shoot the three and he's a good defender. He can really rebound and he's younger still, even though he's been in the league quite a while. But we'll hope that um, that somehow we can get him. I doubt we will. But that's one player, again, like I said, along with Markelle Fultz, that is still hanging out there. But it does look like we might just not do anything with the backup point guard position. And in that case, then Sasser, everybody says that Sasser is not a point guard, and you're probably right. But he played point guard for us. It was frustrating for me. He played point guard last year when Ivey was on the court. So anyway, I'm not positive when going to get back. I'm still in the process of doing my move, but I love talking to you guys, and I'm sorry for not being on the air more. I hope you continue to tune in and be the reason that somebody feels loved and cared for. And go Pistons.